The catalog operator didn't disappear overnight. She was part of American retail for the better part of a century, a voice on the other end of a phone line, connecting customers to warehouses they'd never see, translating page numbers and item codes into orders that arrived on doorsteps and at store pickup counters across the country. At the system's peak, roughly 12 billion catalogs were mailed every year. 90 million people bought from them. Companies like Sears and JCPenney built entire divisions around the phone call. Catalog centers, metropolitan telephone units, distribution networks designed to turn a conversation into a shipment. Then the information the operator carried in her head and on her screen became visible to the customer directly, and one of the largest quiet workforces in American retail started to disappear. There was a phone number printed on the front of the catalog, not buried inside, not hidden in the fine print. Right there, near the top, next to a blank line that said Catalog Center Phone Number, and another that said Your Penny's Customer Number. The 1971 JCPenney Fall/Winter catalog had both, and so did the 1980 Spring/Summer book, along with a line that could have been the company's entire sales philosophy in 12 words. Your catalog order is as close as your telephone and your doorbell. That was the promise. You didn't need to drive anywhere. You didn't need to find parking or fight a crowd or wonder whether they had your size. You picked up the phone, you called the number, and somebody answered. Sears printed its own version of the same idea in its catalogs. It's so easy to shop by phone. All capitals, no hedging. The company wasn't trying to sell you on some futuristic convenience. It was describing something as ordinary as calling the dentist. You needed something. You called. That was how it worked. If you're watching this and you've never done it, here's what the experience actually felt like. The catalog arrived in the mail and it was heavy, not magazine heavy, phone book heavy. The fall edition, the holiday book, the spring and summer issue. Whichever one it was, it landed on the kitchen table and stayed there for weeks. Pages got dog-eared. Order blanks got tucked between sections. Somebody circled a winter coat. Somebody else folded a corner on a coffee maker. The kids found the toy section, naturally. We tell the stories of what America built and how it fell apart. If that's your thing, subscribe. More of these are coming. Now, let's get back to the story. When it came time to order, the choreography was simple. You found the item in the catalog, you kept the item number handy. The catalog printed it right next to the picture, along with the price and whatever choices you needed to make. Size, color, quantity. You picked up the phone and dialed the local catalog center, or the number for the catalog desk inside your nearest JCPenney or Sears store. And then a voice answered. Not an automated menu, not a recording. A person, usually a woman, sitting at a desk or a terminal, probably wearing a headset, and already reaching for the tools she'd need to turn your request into an order that would eventually become a package on your porch or a pickup slip at your local store. She'd confirm the item number. She'd confirm the size and color. She'd check whether the item was available. She'd ask how you wanted to receive it. Shipped to your home by UPS or held for pickup at the catalog department. She'd take your payment information, or in earlier years, confirm whatever approved method you were using. And she'd do all of that without making it feel like a transaction. It felt like a conversation. Let's say you were flipping through JCPenney's 1971 fall/winter catalog. The early apparel pages had sweaters priced around $15 and $16. By the 1980 Sears spring/summer book, similar women's tops appeared in the $18 to $20 range. The point isn't the garment. The point is that those numbers, item codes, sizes, prices, were being read over the phone by one human being to another, and the person on the other end had to get every detail right. JCPenney's 1980 catalog pitched the phone order system as a way to save time, gasoline, and a whole lot of hassle. That's worth pausing on. This wasn't marketed as a luxury. It was marketed as common sense. The catalog was already in your house. The phone was already on your wall. The operator was already at her desk. Why drive? And for a lot of families, especially in smaller towns, or towns where the nearest full-line department store was a real drive, that logic held for decades. Now step behind the counter. Step into the space the customer never saw. From the operator's side, a phone order was not just answering a call, it was translation. A customer would call with a half-finished sentence. I'm looking at page 214, the blue one. I think it's a medium. And the operator's job was to turn that into a clean, usable order, the right item code, the exact variation, a check on availability, a routing decision, home delivery or store pickup. And she had to do all of it while keeping the conversation moving, keeping it human, keeping the customer from feeling like they were feeding data into a machine. In the earlier decades, that meant working from catalog center desks linked to telephone systems and distribution networks. The operator had the catalog open in front of her, the same book the customer had at home, and she was cross-referencing it against whatever internal tools the company provided: stock sheets, inventory lists, order forms that would travel from her desk into the fulfillment pipeline. Later, it meant terminals, screens, keyboards, call center software that connected merchandise databases, customer records, credit systems, and warehouse logistics. The phone still rang. The conversation still happened. But the back end had changed from paper to electronics, and the operator had to keep up with both. Here's what made this skilled work, and it's easy to miss if you've never thought about it. The customer only saw the catalog page, a picture, a description, a price, maybe a color swatch. That was the entire visible surface of a very large system. The operator saw everything underneath. She understood what happened after the customer said, "I'll take it." She knew how an item code became a warehouse instruction. She knew which distribution center handled which merchandise. She knew the difference between available and available soon, and you might want to pick a second choice. That knowledge lived in a person, not in a help menu, not in a search bar. In a person who had been trained and who had done it enough times to be fast. Two physical spaces tell this story. The first was the public-facing space, the catalog desk inside the store. You'd have seen it if you walked into a JCPenney or a Sears in the right years. A counter, usually near the back or the side of the store. Stacks of catalogs, order forms, pens on chains, fluorescent lighting. A customer standing there with a page folded down, pointing at something. A clerk on the other side writing it up. The second was the hidden space, the phone order room. Rows of operators working through incoming calls, headsets, the constant low sound of voices layered over each other, not loud, but never quiet. In later years, the soft clatter of keyboards, a supervisor walking the aisle, and around Christmas, around back to school, around the spring household push, a pace that didn't let up for hours. If you could have walked through that room in late November, here's what you would have noticed first. The phones never fully stopped. There was always a next call, always a customer reading an item number, always someone asking, "Do you have this in a 10?" The rhythm of the room was steady, practiced, relentless in the way that well-organized work is relentless. Not frantic, just continuous. And at the center of every one of those calls was a small, ordinary act of human mediation. The customer didn't have to understand the system. The operator understood it for them. She was part guide, part error checker, part reassurance. For customers who were older or less comfortable with the process or far from the nearest store, that voice on the line was the bridge between a printed promise and a real purchase. She knew how to keep an order moving. The customer didn't have to solve the system alone. Now pull further back, because the operator didn't work alone. She worked inside a machine, a national machine. And if you don't understand the machine, you can't understand why the job existed or why it eventually didn't. JCPenney's 1962 annual report gives you the blueprint. That year, the company opened 7 catalog centers inside Midwestern stores, with more than 100 planned. The report described its service model as three-way service through nearly 1,700 retail stores, in-store catalog centers, and metropolitan telephone units. That one phrase, three-way service, tells you almost everything. The stores were the physical footprint. The catalog centers were the browsing and ordering stations built inside those stores. And the metropolitan telephone units were the dedicated phone order operations that handled high-volume calling from larger cities. The operator was woven into all three. She might be sitting inside a store, or she might be sitting in a standalone phone center across town. Either way, she was connected to the same network. Catalog on one side, warehouse on the other, customer in the middle. Sears built its own version of the same structure, and by 1973 the scale was enormous. That year, Sears reported 12 catalog merchandise distribution centers, and those centers filled nearly 23% of the company's total sales volume. Not 23% of catalog sales, 23% of all sales. The catalog wasn't a side project. It was a central artery of one of the largest retail operations in the country. Behind every operator call, a warehouse had to move. An order that started as a voice on the phone had to become a pick ticket in a distribution center, a package on a loading dock, a shipment through UPS or the company's own delivery network, and finally a box on a doorstep or a slip at the store pickup counter. That chain of events, voice to paper to warehouse to truck to porch, happened millions of times a year. And it worked because the system was built to handle exactly that sequence, with people at every step. To keep this from feeling like the story of two companies, widen the lens for a moment. The catalog operator belonged to a much larger national habit. The Smithsonian's National Postal Museum describes a catalog and mail order industry that generated about $125 billion in annual revenue, involved roughly 7,600 companies, and more than 200,000 employees, mailed about 12 billion catalogs a year, and reached some 90 million American purchasers. 90 million. That's not a niche market. That's a national infrastructure, and the operator was one of its primary human interfaces. So what, specifically, made the operator necessary? One thing: information was locked up. The customer could see the catalog page. That was it. She couldn't see the inventory count. She couldn't see whether her size was in stock at the nearest distribution center. She couldn't see the expected delivery window. She couldn't enter her own shipping information or payment details into a system and have it processed automatically. All of that information existed. The companies kept detailed records, but it lived on the company's side of the counter, inside systems that only employees could access. The operator was the translator between the two worlds. She could read the page the customer was reading, but she could also see into the system the customer couldn't touch. That's why the work was skilled. It wasn't just politeness and phone manners. It was the ability to move between a printed catalog page and a back-end fulfillment system quickly and accurately while keeping a real person comfortable on the other end of the line. In the early phase, the system was a network of catalog desks, phone units, and distribution centers, coordinated by people: clerks, operators, shipping workers, supervisors, with paper and telephones as the primary tools. In the later phase, the operator sat in front of a terminal that connected merchandise databases, customer records, credit processing, and fulfillment routing. The phone stayed, the screen arrived, and the operator had to learn both. This is the right place to say something about the labor itself. JCPenney today says it has operated call centers for more than 50 years, with hundreds of customer care representatives still based in Columbus, Ohio. That gives the occupation a long lineage, generations of workers who sat at those desks, learned the system, and kept the orders moving. In the documentary sense, the catalog operator was an anonymous expert, not celebrated, not famous, not the subject of movies or books, but trained, reliable, and essential to the functioning of a system that generated billions of dollars in sales every year. She was the human being who made remote shopping feel local, who turned a national supply chain into a voice you could talk to. By the late 1990s, the catalog and phone system was not some holdover from a previous era. It was still enormous. JCPenney's numbers from 1999 and 2000 tell the story as clearly as anything can. In 1999, the company operated 2,061 catalog units and recorded $4.290 billion in catalog sales. By 2000, it had 1,708 catalog units and $4.173 billion. The company's own filings said that virtually all department store locations had catalog desks, and that the majority of catalog sales were completed in department stores. Think about that for a moment. Virtually all stores had catalog desks. The majority of catalog sales happened in stores. That means the catalog wasn't a mail-only operation. It was physically embedded in the retail floor of nearly every JCPenney in the country. You could walk in, flip through the book at the counter, Place your order with the clerk standing right there and pick it up at that same store a few days later. Or you could do the whole thing from your kitchen phone and have it delivered. JCPenney called itself the nation's largest general merchandise catalog merchant, a title it measured by combining catalog and internet, and there was no exaggeration in it. This was a company that had built its remote selling operation into the bones of its retail network, and it was still generating more than $4 billion a year from the channel. Sears tells the other half of the story, and it's a more complicated one. The Sears catalog carried cultural weight that went beyond retail inventory. The catalog, especially the Christmas wish book, was household furniture in its own right. It showed up every fall and became part of the season. Kids circled toys, parents compared prices. The book sat on coffee tables and kitchen counters from October through December. Sears had already announced the closure of its traditional catalog division in 1993, a turning point we'll come back to. But even after that, the company understood the emotional power of the book well enough to launch the Christmas catalog on wishbook.com in 1998. The format changed. The feeling the company hoped wouldn't. But let's stay for a moment in the peak, before the cracks, because what peak meant wasn't drama. It was normalcy. The catalog sat in the house. The desk was in the store. The number was printed on the cover. The operator was there when you needed her. None of this required explanation or effort. It was built into the ordinary rhythm of how people bought things. School clothes in August, curtains when you moved, an appliance when the old one gave out, gifts in December, a winter coat when the weather turned. The catalog covered all of it, and the operator handled the transaction. 12 billion catalogs a year mailed across the country, 90 million Americans buying from them. And behind every phone order, a voice confirming an item number, checking a size, routing a shipment. Picture the Christmas rush in a catalog phone center, late November. The calls start earlier in the morning and run later into the evening. The pace picks up and doesn't ease until mid-December. Every operator on the floor is working steadily. Item numbers, gift sizes, shipping deadlines, the occasional, "Is there any way to get this by the 23rd?" The room hums with it. Not chaos, just volume. The practiced, continuous motion of a system running at capacity. Or picture the back-to-school season. A mother calling in with a list. 3 kids, different sizes, different needs. The operator working through the order item by item, confirming each one, catching a mistake in the size before it ships, suggesting the pickup option because it'll be faster. 20 minutes on the phone. 3 kids outfitted for September. The package ready at the local store by Thursday. These weren't remarkable interactions. That's exactly the point. They were ordinary. And because they were ordinary, because millions of people did this every year without thinking twice about it, the system felt permanent. It felt like something that would always be there. The whole thing ran on a simple premise. You could shop from home, but you needed another person to complete the transaction. You needed a voice on the other end of the line who could see what you couldn't see, confirm what you weren't sure about, and move your order into the pipeline. That was the deal. That was how America shopped remotely for the better part of the 20th century, and then the ground shifted. It didn't shift all at once. It didn't announce itself with a single dramatic event. It started with a screen and a cursor, and an idea that felt at first like nothing more than an extension of what already existed. A new way to browse the same catalog, a new way to reach the same warehouse, a new way to place the same order. Except it wasn't the same. Because this time, there was no voice on the other end of the line. Here is the thing that changed everything. And it was not complicated. Websites started showing customers the information that only employees used to see. That's it. That's the whole technological revolution, stripped to its core. The inventory count, the size availability, the color options, the shipping estimate, the order form, the payment screen, all of it. Everything the operator had accessed on her terminal, everything the clerk had looked up behind the catalog desk, started appearing on a screen in the customer's own house. And once customers could see that information for themselves, a very large share of them stopped needing someone to read it to them. JCPenney's own numbers show you how fast this moved. In 1999, JCPenney.com offered more than 200,000 items and recorded about $102 million in online sales. up roughly 600% from the year before. By 2000, online sales were approaching $300 million. By 2003, internet sales had climbed to $617 million. Those numbers were still small next to the catalog's $4 billion, but the direction was unmistakable. And the speed, 600% growth in a single year, was the kind of number that made executives pay very close attention. What's important for the documentary is that this didn't feel, at first, like a replacement. It felt like an addition. JCPenney's annual reports from this era grouped catalog and internet sales together in the same line, which tells you something revealing about how management understood the new channel. They saw it as an extension of the catalog, a digital version of the same book, a new front door into the same warehouse, and for a while, that's exactly how it worked. The paper catalog, the phone order, the in-store desk, and the website all operated side by side. A customer could still call the number on the cover. A customer could still walk into the store and place an order at the catalog counter. But now a customer could also sit down at a computer, find the same item, and order it without speaking to anyone. This coexistence period matters dramatically because it's the part of the story where the old and the new shared the same space. Picture a JCPenney catalog call center around 2001 or 2002. The phones are still ringing. The operators are still at their terminals, still confirming item numbers, still routing orders. But the call volume has started to flatten. Not collapse, not yet. Just flatten. A few fewer calls this month than last. A few more orders coming through the website that would have come through the phone a year ago. The operators would have noticed. They counted on volume the way anyone in a transaction-based job counts on volume. When the call's slow, you feel it. Meanwhile, somewhere in the same company, a team of web developers and digital merchandisers was building out the site, adding product pages, refining the checkout flow, making it easier for customers to do what the operator had always done for them. Those two groups of employees, the phone operators and the web team, were working for the same company, serving the same customers, pulling from the same inventory. But one group's success was slowly becoming the other group's irrelevance. That's the tension of the coexistence period. From a distance, it looked like expansion. More ways to shop, more access, more convenience. From inside the phone center, it felt like the beginning of something else. The logic was already tipping. Because the website didn't just replicate what the operator did, it changed the relationship between the customer and the system. The operator's value had always rested on a simple fact. The customer couldn't see the back end. She needed someone to look things up, confirm availability, route the order. The website made all of that visible. It put the inventory screen, the order form, and the payment system directly in front of the customer. And it did it 24 hours a day, without a hold time, without a busy signal, without a staffed phone center. Think about what that meant from the customer's side. You used to call during business hours, wait for an operator, read off an item number, confirm your size, spell your address, and wait for a confirmation. The whole thing might take 10 minutes if everything went smoothly, longer if the line was busy or the item was complicated. Now you could sit down at 11 o'clock at night, search for the same item, click through 3 screens, and be done in 2 minutes. No waiting, no spelling, no schedule. The customer didn't need a translator anymore. She could read the system herself. Once customers could browse on their own, enter their own information, and place their own orders, the economics of labor-intensive phone ordering became very difficult to defend. Think about what a phone order cost the company: an operator's wages, benefits, training. And the training wasn't trivial, because a new operator had to learn the catalog system, the terminal software, the inventory logic, the shipping options, and the conversational skills to handle hundreds of different customer situations. A workstation, a headset, a supervisor for every 15 or 20 operators. A building to put them all in. Leased, heated, maintained, cleaned. Multiply that by hundreds of operators across multiple call centers, running shifts that covered business hours and peak seasons. That's a significant fixed cost layered on top of every catalog transaction. Now think about what a web order cost: a server, a software platform, bandwidth, some maintenance and development staff. Once the system was built, the incremental cost of each additional order was close to nothing. The 10,000th customer placing an order at 2 in the morning cost the company almost exactly the same as the first customer at 9 a.m. No operator needed, no hold time, no building full of headsets. The math was not subtle, and JCPenney's SEC filings make the tipping point visible in plain numbers. By 2008, sales through catalog print media and outlet stores had declined by $267 million, while JCP.com held steady at around $1.5 billion. In 2009, print media and outlet sales dropped another $153 million, again against roughly $1.5 billion online. The company's own language described this plainly, a continued shift from print media to JCP.com. That phrase, continued shift, is corporate understatement for what was actually happening on the ground. Every dollar that moved from the catalog to the website was a dollar that no longer required an operator to process it. Every customer who learned to order online was a customer who stopped calling the phone center. The volume was draining out of the old channel and pooling in the new one, and the new one didn't need the same workforce. Think about what that felt like inside the call center. You come in for your shift, you log into your terminal, and the calls come, but not like they used to. There are gaps now, moments of quiet that didn't exist 5 years ago. Your supervisor doesn't say anything alarming, but you notice the empty desks. A position opens up and doesn't get filled. A seasonal hire class is smaller than last year's. The Christmas rush still comes, but it peaks a little lower and ends a little sooner. None of these things individually is dramatic. Together, they tell you something is happening that you can't stop. It's worth being fair about what the new system genuinely offered: speed, self-service, 24-hour access, a sense of immediate control that the phone call couldn't match. You could search, you could compare, you could read reviews, you could change your mind 3 times and nobody was waiting on the line while you did it. You could look at an item in 3 different colors, check the size chart, read what other customers said about the fit, and make a decision with more information than any operator could have conveyed in a phone conversation. For a lot of customers, especially younger ones who had grown up with computers, this wasn't a downgrade. It was an obvious improvement, and for the companies, the economics were irresistible. A web platform that could handle millions of transactions with a fraction of the labor cost of a staffed phone center wasn't just more convenient for customers, it was dramatically cheaper to operate. When a company can serve more customers with fewer employees and lower overhead, the strategic direction rights itself. What changed culturally was expectation. People stopped accepting that a purchase needed to be mediated by another human being. If the information could be placed directly on the screen in front of them, the idea of calling a number, waiting for someone to answer, and reading an item code out loud started to feel not wrong exactly, but unnecessary. Slow. A step that didn't need to be there. A generation of customers was growing up for whom calling a phone number to buy something felt as quaint as sending a telegram. They weren't hostile to the old way. They just couldn't see the point. The catalog operator's centrality didn't collapse in a single moment. It eroded. Each year, the web took a larger share of orders. Each year, the phone center handled a smaller share. And each year, the case for maintaining large-scale staffed ordering operations got a little harder to make. The decline didn't look like a dramatic ending. It looked like a tide going out. Not one event, not one announcement. A series of closures, consolidations, restructuring charges, and local news stories that most people never saw unless they worked in one of the buildings that was shutting down. Sears moved first, and its move carried the most symbolic weight. In 1993, Sears announced it was closing its traditional catalog business. This was the company that had essentially invented mass-market remote shopping in America. The Sears catalog had been arriving in American homes for over a century. It had sold everything from socks to houses, actual houses, shipped in pieces by rail, assembled on lots across the country. The Christmas wish book had been part of the holiday season for generations of families, and now the company was saying it was done. That announcement sent a signal through the entire industry. If Sears, the company whose name was almost synonymous with the catalog, couldn't justify it anymore, the ground was shifting under everyone. Sears didn't close because the catalog was unprofitable in isolation. It closed because the company was restructuring broadly, shedding businesses, and the catalog, with its enormous printing, distribution, and labor costs, was one of the things that had to go. But the reasons were almost beside the point. The symbolism was what mattered. The biggest name in American mail order had walked away from the book. 5 years later, in 1998, Sears tried to preserve some of the catalog's emotional pull by launching the Christmas Wish Book on wishbook.com. The gesture was telling. The company understood that the book still meant something to people, that the act of flipping through pages and circling gifts carried a feeling that a plain website didn't automatically replicate. But meaning and economics are different things, and the economics had already spoken. JCPenney held on longer, but the numbers told the same story in slower motion. The company's SEC filings from 2010 and 2011 lay out the final chapter with the dry precision of regulatory language. In the fourth quarter of 2010, JCPenney announced a plan to exit its catalog outlet stores and wind down the catalog business. By October 2011, it had sold outlet assets related to that exit. The filings described restructuring tied to winding down catalog and outlet operations and streamlining call center operations. Streamlining call center operations. That's what it looked like in a corporate filing. Here's what it looked like on the ground. In 2005, JCPenney closed a call center in Bountiful, Utah, and cut 375 jobs. A company spokesman said more customers were ordering online rather than through live operators. That's a clean sentence in a news report. On the other side of that sentence were 375 people who went home that day knowing the job they'd been doing was finished. Some had worked those phones for years. Some had started during the holiday rush and stayed. Some had raised families on that paycheck. The building was going to close, and they were going to have to find something else. In 2010, the company closed a catalog call center in Chesterfield County, Virginia, cutting 252 jobs, again in the context of falling catalog volume and rising internet use. By 2011, reporting described JCPenney consolidating what remained of its catalog activity into a smaller number of facilities, including operations in Columbus, Pittsburgh, and Milwaukee. Each of those closures followed the same pattern: an announcement, a timeline, a severance package, if there was one. And then the room went quiet, the terminals were shut down, the headsets were collected, the desks were cleared, and a space that had been full of voices confirming item numbers, checking sizes, routing shipments, wishing customers a good evening, was just a room. Some operators retired. The timing worked for those who were already near the end of their careers. The catalog phone center had been, for many of them, the last chapter of a working life that had spanned the era from paper order forms to computer terminals. They'd seen the whole arc. They knew, probably better than anyone, that the change was coming. Some moved into customer service roles that still existed but no longer revolved around the catalog. The job had changed. Instead of guided ordering, walking a customer through a purchase from catalog page to confirmation, the remaining call center work shifted toward issue resolution, returns, account questions, and the kind of omnichannel support that even an online system couldn't fully automate. The phone still rang, but the conversation on the other end was different. It wasn't, "I'd like to order the blue cardigan on page 87. It was, "My order hasn't arrived," or "I need to return this," or "I can't figure out how to use the website." The operator had become a troubleshooter, not a guide. Some simply moved on, found other work, retail, administrative jobs, other call centers in other industries. The skills they'd built, patience, speed, accuracy, the ability to manage a conversation while navigating a complex system, were transferable. But the specific thing they'd been trained to do, the particular combination of catalog knowledge and order processing and human rapport that had defined the job, no longer had a market. And the physical spaces changed too. The in-store catalog desk vanished first from daily life, then from memory, then from floor plans. Counters were removed. The space was reassigned, filled with new merchandise displays, or fitting rooms, or nothing in particular. If you walked into a JCPenney in 2015, you wouldn't have seen a trace of the catalog desk that had been a fixture of that same store 10 years earlier. It was gone as if it had never been there. You would have had to know what to look for to notice what was missing. The call center floors were consolidated or repurposed. The rooms that had once hummed with hundreds of simultaneous phone orders went silent or were converted to handle different kinds of calls or were closed outright. And the particular competence, the ability to take a catalog page, a stock code, and a half-finished customer sentence and turn them into a clean, routed order, stopped being a mass-market skill. It didn't become mysterious or lost in some romantic sense. It simply stopped being something the economy needed at scale. The knowledge was still there, in the people who had done the work, but the work was gone. So what disappeared? Not shopping from home. That grew. It grew enormously. The desire to buy things without leaving your house didn't shrink when the catalog operator went away. It exploded. The volume of remote purchasing today dwarfs anything the catalog system ever handled. The impulse that drove a customer to pick up the phone and call a JCPenney catalog center in 1985 is the same impulse that drives a customer to tap a screen at midnight now. The want didn't change. The method did. What disappeared was the human layer, a layer of mediation between the customer and the system. A voice that knew how the system worked, that could catch a mistake before it shipped, that could suggest the faster option, that could make a national supply chain feel local and personal. That voice, multiplied across thousands of operators in dozens of call centers serving millions of customers, was a kind of infrastructure in its own right. Not physical infrastructure, human infrastructure. And when the economics made it unnecessary, it was dismantled just as surely as any warehouse or rail line. For customers who were comfortable navigating systems on their own, the loss was barely noticeable. The website was better in most measurable ways, faster, always available, more selection, more information, no hold time, no busy signal. The replacement was not irrational or hollow. It was genuinely more efficient, and the numbers proved it. By the late 2000s, JCP.com was generating around $1.5 billion in annual sales, even as the print catalog was falling away. The shift brought scale and lower cost, and it brought real convenience to millions of people. But for customers who weren't comfortable, older customers, less tech-savvy customers, people who simply preferred the reassurance of another human voice, something was lost that the new system didn't replace. The website could show you inventory, it could process your order, it could email you a confirmation. What it couldn't do was listen to you describe what you were looking for in your own uncertain words and help you find it. It couldn't hear hesitation in your voice and offer a suggestion. It couldn't say, that one runs a little small, you might want to go up a size. It couldn't make you feel like there was a person on the other end who cared whether you got the right thing. That's a small thing. But it mattered to the people it mattered to, and there were more of those people than the sales charts suggested. What also disappeared was a particular kind of work. The catalog operator occupied a space in the labor economy that was specific and skilled. Clerical, yes, but clerical in the way that required memory, accuracy, product knowledge, procedural fluency, and the interpersonal steadiness to manage hundreds of conversations a day without letting any single one feel rushed or mechanical. It was anonymous expertise. Nobody wrote profiles of catalog operators. Nobody made documentaries about them, until now perhaps. But the work was real, and it sustained real careers and real communities. Call centers anchored local economies. They provided steady employment, often with benefits, often for people who might not have had a 4-year degree, but who had the aptitude and discipline to learn a complex system and perform under pressure. JCPenney still employs hundreds of customer care representatives in Columbus, Ohio today. The call center exists, but it is no longer the same thing. The classic catalog order voice, the one that turned a page number and an item code into a package, is no longer central to how the company sells. The lineage continues, but the original role has narrowed to something the industry would barely recognize. The catalog operator fits a pattern that runs through a lot of American economic history. The telephone operator, the bank teller, the travel agent, the ticket clerk, each one existed because information had to pass through a trained human being before it could reach the customer. Each one disappeared, or shrank dramatically, when technology put that same information directly into the customer's hands. The pattern is consistent. The human intermediary is valuable exactly as long as the information remains locked up. The moment the lock opens, the intermediary becomes optional, and optional, in a competitive economy, eventually means gone. That's not a tragedy in the usual sense. It's a transition. But transitions have weight. They carry the accumulated skill and routine and identity of the people who did the work. And when a transition is complete, when the last call center is consolidated, the last catalog desk is removed, the last operator logs off for the final time, all of that weight settles quietly into the past, where most people never think about it again. Here's where the story ends, not with the industry, not with the company filings, with the catalog. Picture it one more time. A heavy book on a kitchen table, pages marked with folded corners and pencil circles. A family's wants made visible on paper. A coat for winter, a dress for a daughter, a set of towels, a toy that a child has been staring at since October. And on the front cover, a number, a local number, or at least one that felt local. Next to it, a blank line for your customer number, as if the company already knew you and was just waiting for your call. That number was the entire system compressed into a single point of contact. The warehouse, the distribution network, the inventory database, the shipping pipeline, all of it reached through one phone call and one human voice. You didn't have to understand how any of it worked. You just had to dial. The catalog operator didn't vanish because people stopped wanting to buy things from home. That desire only grew. What vanished was the human voice that once stood between wanting and receiving. The system got faster, cheaper, more efficient, and more self-service. And somewhere inside that improvement, an entire category of ordinary expertise, patient, accurate, invisible, essential, disappeared into the machinery of a success story so large that almost nobody noticed what it had replaced. The next time you place an order online, any order, from anywhere, and the confirmation appears on your screen 3 seconds after you click, take a moment, not to mourn anything, just to notice. There used to be a person who did that. She sat at a desk with a headset and a terminal, and she turned your words into a package. She was good at it. And she's gone. Did your family order from Sears or Penney's by phone? Do you remember the catalog desk in your local store? The counter near the back? The stacks of books? The clerk with the order forms? Do you remember the number printed on the cover and the blank line where you wrote in your customer number? And if you ever worked one of those order lines, albeit during the Christmas rush or the back-to-school season, or just on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when the calls came slow and steady, what do you remember customers asking for most? We'd like to hear about it. The comments are open.